Welcome back to the Weekly Roundup, the place where we unpack what's been going on in the yoga and wellness world and what we've been coaching our clients through. Basically, what are we seeing that's happening? Let's push it over to Bridget to kick it off. Bridget, what is happening in the yoga business world / wellness business world / studio business world / reformer / Legree / bar / pole? There's a lot of slashes that are happening. We've got a bunch of clients now outside of just yoga that are coming into the mix here. So
Well, as I don't have any clients myself right now, I'm not sure
Yet.
what I would say what are the um, overall things going on. At my own studio, we've got kind of a little fun springtime surge, I would say. Spring's always a pretty good time for us. And things have been really fun. We did a fun like free beginners night and sold a bunch of memberships and a couple of our beginner series at full price, and our beginner series kicks off on Monday. And yeah, things have been good. Terry, what's going on with you?
Well,
hang on. Bridget, talk to us about the beginner series. This is
yeah,
actually,
a
this has
good thing.
always been a thing in the yoga
Yeah.
world, that there's like these beginner series, beginner classes, whatever.
Yeah.
And from a business viewpoint, they have an interesting impact sometimes. So
Yeah.
what's kind of your objective with it, and what are you seeing? Like, how are people reacting with it?
Yeah, overall, series in general, we have a few. We've got our beginner series, we have a prenatal series, a baby and me kind of postpartum yoga series, and we have a postpartum support group that all basically have the exact same structure. They're 6 weeks long. They cost the same amount. Um, and they have been totally transformative to our business specifically. I can't say that they work perfectly for everybody, but what I've done, which I had never heard anyone else talk about, though I'm sure someone else probably does it too, but what I have done is I make them free to members, which has been really key because yes, you can buy the series. Our 6-week series for all of them is $145, but you can also buy our membership, which is $129. And so it's cheaper to buy the membership right off the bat, but usually we keep them around for at least 2, because you need to get through the 6-week series. Because after your membership expires or whatever, then you can't keep coming or whatever. Um, and it's just such an easy sell because it's like you get everything then, if you just buy the series, you've just got 6 classes, but buy our membership, our unlimited membership, and you get all of our classes, every single series you want to go to, et cetera, et cetera. Specifically, our beginner series has been great. We kind of cater really specifically to like, we always say like no pressure, no competition, no judgment. And so we really, even our Instagram bio, the first line says, "We love beginners." So we really cater to that crowd specifically. But the beginner series has been so especially amazing, prenatal, postpartum, whatever. It's great. It brings in a lot of revenue for us, but they're not like the best long-term clients because they've got babies or whatever, they go back to work, etc. But the beginner series has brought us like some of our longest term clients, like just the best people we bring in. And we just started doing this. So it's 6 weeks. And then the week before, we're trying out this free class. And so we get as free beginners class. It's at the same exact time as the series is. And yeah, we tried it out for the first time last week. I did minimal advertising, or this week, sorry, I did minimal everything. I was like out of the country and sold out and sold a bunch of memberships that night, sold a couple full price of the series itself, and did like almost nothing. So it was just
Nice.
a
Those are
win.
always good ones, right?
Yeah.
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 You know, we called it a basics class. It was every Saturday. It was the Saturday ending morning class, like 11 a.m. or something like that. And it was supposed to be that it was free, but only if you had an intro at the time. If I was doing it today, I would do membership too. And we ran that for a couple of years. And what I can say is, yeah, our retention rate from intro to membership, if someone took just one of those classes, was on average 10 to 15% higher. And it gave that opportunity for like depth of conversation, it to be more focused for them, or whatever. So I've experienced something kind of similar. And then there's a studio in Australia that we coached with for a while, and they had an intro and they had like a beginner's program.
Hmm.
And so they had an interesting scenario where those two things were in competition of each other. They were
Hmm.
struggling to sell the intro because people would choose the beginner's program. So conceptually, it was cool, but the formula didn't really work. And their beginner's program was long too. So their retention of it wasn't that good because people would do the beginner's program and then be like, I'm kind of done with yoga for the moment. And they would
Yeah.
leave. Um, so we've seen sort of a variation of this concept, but lots of studios come up with this idea and have, it's been in a lot of markets. Terry, what have you seen with this? What's your thought? Like sort of the beginner's program concept.
Well, I can tell you from my personal experience, it didn't, I never was successful with it. We tried it. Maybe it was just how I approached it. I'm sure that's a lot part of it but at the time, all we had was Bikram. And it's like, right? So, and then even when I added IHP, it was just like there's enough time in that class that you can have like beginners. I mean, somebody brand new. So, and I did try it like during your intro we had, and I paid a teacher and all, and it just like 2 and 3 people would show up. So I axed
Right.
it. So I can say that with clients that do beginner classes, what I have found, and again, when Bridget and I were working together, this is where we found sort of that flip is rather than having it like a regular class on the schedule, which I have not seen be successful. And Carol, maybe you can talk to this a little bit too and your clients, whether it's the prenatal, postnatal, pregnancy, beginners, what I've seen be more successful is when you do package it as a series. And it's a series of classes for a finite amount of time and happens at the same time every week. It's like if you buy this, if you miss one, oh well, so sad, too bad kind of thing. And then like we talked about with Bridget, is then you can include like, hey, and if you buy our intro offer, then you can take other classes as well. And when we tried that at your studio, that really was helped take it off, as I recall, Bridget. That really helped create that demand a little bit more, right?
It was, so what I was going to say for the solve that, yeah, we came up with for like the competition is actually now all of my series, if it's your first time, you also get like an intro offer. So it's
Yeah.
like, and this is true for my prenatal and postpartum ones too. So if you're new, and you buy the beginner series for $145, we give you like a free intro offer. So for those 6 weeks, you can also take all the other classes. I don't like letting intro offer people take my series though,
Right.
because it's
Yes.
so cheap and it's
Yeah.
just not sustainable.
Yeah.
And I want it to drive people to membership, and it has worked so well. Like
Yeah.
I made so much extra MRR from funneling my pregnant people into our membership because I'm like, hey, you can get all of our classes, which are all prenatal accommodated. Obviously, this doesn't work for hot studios, but all of our classes plus this prenatal series. And now we have 2 on the schedule. So you can attend both series for just the price of your membership. So,
Yeah.
Actually, it can work for a hot studio. I mean,
oh, I didn't know pregnant people. I thought pregnant people couldn't do hot yoga.
no, it depends.
No, they definitely
They
can.
definitely can. What with this is just sort of the general rule is if you have a hot practice,
Mhm.
we don't, I mean, we were always like, we don't advocate starting a hot practice when you're pregnant And also if your it's just like, as long as your doctor says it's okay, or if it's classified high risk pregnancy or geriatric pregnancy, which just cracks me up because over 35 is considered geriatric pregnancy. But no, I'm sure you got Carol and I had plenty.
Oh,
Did you
that's good.
practice when you were pregnant
Oh
with
yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. All the way up until I'm sure just a couple days before. So
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew
felt
someone
great.
that taught
I
and
think it
practiced.
really depends. It really depends on the practice
Yeah.
and the studio too.
Yeah.
I have to say, I have had the scenario as a bit of a tangent where I coached a studio away from this. It's very rare that this happens, but it was very apparent in our conversation that like they had never been pregnant themselves. They had never done any training around this. They didn't understand how to handle this or whatever. And they were like, yeah, but in other studios, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, but who cares about other studios? Your studio. Like,
yeah.
can you help this person appropriately? Yes, with absolute fucking confidence. Don't fuck around on this one kind of thing. No. So like it was their studio policy that they didn't take people if they were pregnant.
Yeah.
Period. And then I've seen the reverse. Style, the specific individual, the doctor, like all of that comes into the equation. It's tricky.
Yeah.
The beginner series thing, I think this idea of series is something that I feel like studios are not utilizing as much as they could in a lot of cases, because in COVID, we talked about this a lot, actually. I hate to come back to the COVID, but they're like, that's a blip in time where we got to test a bunch of weird shit because it was like you were just trying stuff and the market kept shifting. But so it's the idea of it being this concrete packaged thing. I'm going to solve this thing specifically. It starts here and it ends here. It's exactly this. From a salesperson perspective, that's always really interesting because it's easy to create clarity in the purchaser's mind. Like, what is this? Why do I want it? How do I buy it? That's really easy to do. And so for some people, that's a real necessity. It's too vague very often to be like, yeah, join monthly membership and just pay indefinitely forever as we work on some stuff and you'll like improve. Like that's too just out here, whatever. The context isn't there. So I feel like building any sort of programming in this way to run at some cadence is smart and probably gets you a larger market of people or helps you get a larger group of your current market of people more committed in a way that you would struggle to do otherwise.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you go way back, that's pretty much how it started. It's like, you would sign up.
Yeah, that's always, there was no such thing as drop-in classes.
Right. It's like you say, okay, I'm going to take, Josh's Nomads Yoga class. I'm going to do it twice a week at 6 p.m. at this day, this time, and it's this much for this many weeks. And in thinking about it, as you were talking, Josh, it's like, yeah, you could create, even if you could create series around different things as well. I mean,
think about it like
infinite.
workshops,
Yeah,
but they're
it's
6 weeks long. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you want, and this could be something, this thought just popped in my head. What do you guys think about this? So sometimes with studios, they have a core group. I'm thinking more specifically like Vinyasa studio as opposed to like a Bikram studio. But even in Bikram, there's the advanced series if you want to have the advanced series on your schedule. But let's say in a Vinyasa school, you tend to always have a core group of students that are wanting to progress, right? Wanting to do things like headstand, handstands, the more inversions or more complex postures, but sometimes there's not, you don't want to be catering in a class to this finite group of people. So I just thought off my head, well, you could offer like that as a series. It's like, hey, you want to do this inversion series with Carol, we're offering it. And this is where you can offer it at different times when maybe you don't have a class.
Well, Terry, I would challenge what you're saying in one specific way. Not really challenge. I would add to what you're saying, actually. Yeah. In your like classic Bikram studio, this is even more valuable sometimes because if you're going to stick to this is what we do, how we do it, like there's no variation in the postures, et cetera, this is the excuse for people to explore these other things.
Yeah.
And so the Bikram Advanced is actually a really good example of where like it's hard. It's fucking super long. It's super hard. There's postures that you are so far out of the realm of the regular sequence that like the gap between them is insane. How there isn't an intermediate series is still idiotic.
Well, there kind of is. That's what.
Well, D made one. Like there's a few people made one. The point.
Yeah.
Right, but my point would be these series of like, let's suppose you're going to stay really strict sort of gauche lineage in a studio. If I was formulating that today, there would be the standard class, an intermediate, and an advanced class. The advanced wouldn't be Bikram Advanced, it's still too long.
Yeah.
And then I would run series. You do it once in a while for fun because it is fun. But you would run series towards like, yeah, how forward bending series, or how do you do a handstand series or whatever else? Because there's no practice for that in the regular thing. I'm just making the point. This is a alternative way to package something to like appease your students and give them something else without changing your core product
And
potentially
increasing
too.
their lifetime value, LTV, having something else
Yep.
to sell to them. And I just will say that some of my fondest memories in my time in New England was we used to do advanced every Thursday. It was 2+ hours, and then this core
Yep.
group, we'd go out to lunch afterwards, and it was just super fun. But of course, that was when all we did was yoga. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
but
And
it,
so, those sorts of practices, well, like way back in the day when I first started doing it, you weren't quote allowed to do it unless you were a teacher.
yep,
So like it was really more about the camaraderie and the teachers having their own practice and trying some fancy shit than anything else. It expanded beyond that because that was a silly way to do it. But
well, what's expanded it
but
was the USA the competition, because then people wanted to do the competition, and so they would do the advanced
right.
the competition posture.
Well,
So
so I would also just point out that let's take the other end of the spectrum is your restorative studio, right? Where it's like there's barely even a full flow, a full vinyasa in.
well, you can't really read it, but this is my 2016 New England Regional ASA Yoga Championship, first place senior division.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Nice. It's the funniest thing ever to say yoga competition to
I
this
know.
day.
I know.
Like people who weren't around for it, like, are
They're
like,
like,
what are
what?
you talking
Talking
about?
about?
Like, it's so wild. Yeah. But even, yeah, I was thinking about like even your restorative studio, you're a much more yin based, quote unquote, therapeutic based, slower practice. There's just so many cool workshop like series you could do. You could do a whole one that's just based off myofascial release and yoga postures. You could do one that's specifically based off of, hip mobility. You could do more of a breathwork style one. So, anyways, these series I think are like a cool
Yeah,
idea. Carol, did you guys run anything like this?
Nope, we just made our money on classes only. We didn't run retreats. We didn't do anything
No.
extra. We just
I love
ran
that.
classes. I mean, it worked.
It worked.
Yeah.
But
I
what's
agree.
coming up for me is like we just had a big discussion about this beginner that went to a Bikram style class and was, chastised for drinking water. And I'm wondering if having a beginner series like this would allow that time to this is the reason
Yeah.
why, because that was what was getting lost, I think, in that in
Yeah.
that
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so anyway, so I think it could work in a 26 and 2 style, just like
That's
any other.
actually a good point. When we did our basics class, that was part of it was like it was shorter and 50% of the class was more about what are we trying to do? It was understanding what we're trying to do. It wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
Like the only way you're gonna know what to do or like be able to do the thing, the postures, whatever, is by doing it. So you just take class and you figure it out. Like there's some instruction or whatever, but it's more about the discussion around it. I've seen what my dad's like old school Ashtangi, Putabi Joyce. We used to go see him when he'd come to San Francisco, kind of thing. Like just, and he's a salty old man. So he's like, uh, it's either my sore practice or you got to sign up for an 8-week series and you have to show. If you miss one, you're out.
Yeah. I had a teacher.
Like that's his attitude about teaching. He's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'll teach, but this is how we do it. Like there's no fucking other option. And it's super hardcore that way. But those details aside, I feel like the value point from that is this concept of progressive practice and how for some people you give them this concrete frame of like, this is a beginner series, and then we're going to just start here, like understand this, and then you build on top of that the next time, and on top of that next time. And because you kind of quote unquote guarantee the same group, you can do that. Versus like in a public class, I think a lot of teachers these days, and myself included in the past, right? Like they really struggle to teach, because we always, the way I always describe it is I don't teach Josh's yoga class. Like that's not even the objective. My objective is to teach the class in front of me today.
Right.
But that requires a certain experience and skill level, and is an ongoing process of honing your craft. For a lot of yoga teachers, they can't do that. And either by choice or by lack of skill or by just they're new. So it's not even a shade that it casts on them, but just like they can't actually do that. And so you get that class where it's like you've got 20 people who've been practicing with you for 10 years, and someone in there can do handstand, scorpion, and hollow back, and then a brand new person who can't do a vinyasa at all. That's a hard class to teach. Like there's a lot of other informational things you could be working on with someone. So a series sort of affords for the whole business a way to buffer for that a little bit, maybe.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because in the beginner series, someone's capability doesn't matter anymore. You're like, this is the program, and it's this long, and we're covering the beginner stuff, and you just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we spend a lot of time like talking to them about like what to do if there's a pose you can't do, you know, and like all of these
Yeah.
things that are intimidating to people and end up making them not come back is just like like just saying it out loud, like this is going to happen sometimes, like, you know, blah blah blah, and this is what you can do, and hopefully, you know, my teachers are supposed to be offering options, but like you said, it takes skill and honing your craft. So yeah.
Yeah, for a new teacher, I took a class here last week, and the teacher was clearly very new. Like you can just tell in how they cue and stuff. They did a great job.
Yeah.
But they're clearly like probably have done a 2-hour, 100-hour teacher training probably in the last years would be my guess.
Mm-hmm.
Or they just don't teach at all. I don't know. But they got flustered a few times was one thing. And then the big thing that stood out was there were a couple of people who couldn't do a posture, including myself. Like I'm really stiff right now. And so I actually understand how to do the posture. I physically cannot do it, but I know how to work in my body. So I'm just doing I wasn't doing a different posture, but I'm doing as much of the posture as I can, and like feeling into where it feels good for me and getting things to open up, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, well, if you can't do it like child's pose, you can just do child's pose, or you can just do this thing on your back. And it was interesting because you could see that it flustered them was the point. That then I didn't listen to that. I'm like, no, we're doing a forward bend. I'm not going to go switch to child's pose right now. But like, good try. But then they were like, oh, now what do I do? But just, teachers, that's tricky to, even for teachers, get good at teaching that is a long-winded way of saying, I think that offering a beginner series is also good for your team.
Yeah.
Because if you have a new teacher, be like, you have to take the beginner series. Like that's how they learn through osmosis. Like, what do you do with beginners?
Mm-hmm.
And then if they teach that too, and they have more experience. When I first started teaching scuba diving, the shop that I was at, and I don't actually agree with this philosophy, I would do it reverse, but the shop that I was at said, if you're the newest teacher, you have to teach the beginner's open water course, which is the longest of the courses to teach and has the most bullshit that goes on. Like it's the hardest one, actually. So really it should have been that the most experienced person taught it. But the point was, after like 3 months of teaching brand new, never done scuba diving ever, all the way through their certification, you can teach. Like you can teach in the weirdest scenarios with people who don't speak a language, and you get someone who can't swim, and then someone gets stung by a jellyfish while you're out there, whatever. Like you've seen it by that point. So you get really good really fast. I could see that with yoga sequence too.
Yeah, 100%.
Here's a question, a little different direction. What's with the not announcing shit in class? Is it just me, or is that like that's like a thing now, and I don't feel like it was a thing before? Is that just
I mean,
me?
like actually saying we're not going to do announcements in class.
Yeah. Or this beginners thing comes up to me in
Yeah.
every class in my last studio and the two before it, for that matter. If you had someone brand new in the class, you had to mandatorily start the class by saying a little spiel.
Mhm.
Hey, my new friends, glad you're here. Where are you? There you are. Great to
Yeah.
see you. You're set up well. Here's what you need to know. This is like we were talking about alternative postures. We tell them, here's how you take a break.
I think I can tell here, this is what my gut tells me. It has all to do with what we talked about on Spill the Booch the other day. It's like people might, I think maybe there's a fear factor. Oh, if I say anything, it signals them out, and then I don't know how they're going to respond. And I think there's a lot of that right now. That's just what when you were talking about that, that's what my gut I flashed on. Is like when you said that, oh, oh my gosh, I went to this yoga class, I was brand new, and the teacher was talking to me, and it made me really anxious and nervous, and I'd never go back there. And oh my God, how could they do that?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. That was, Carol, what do you think?
I mean, I think there is a lot of that fear, but I think that in the long run, if you're giving them good information and that's something that's going to help them, it doesn't, I think the tone and intentionality behind it is what's key, right? So you're there to like not pointing them out. There's my new person. It's like, oh, welcome, friend.
Yeah.
This is what's going to help you through class today. I want you to have a good experience. So like that's all important pieces of
Yeah.
this.
I have to tell, you said that I flashed on this. I'll tell a funny story real quick because I'm a 7. Way back, I was teaching. I had just got to New England. I was teaching at my friend's studio, and there was first time person there, and he was kind of set up in. It was a big studio. It could hold like, I mean, at one point we did a Groupon. They packed 83 people in this room. So yeah, it's a big room. So anyway, the guy set up. I think he's doing whatever he's doing. His name is Michael. And I couldn't remember. And I said, oh, my friend, you're doing such a great job. And he told me much later, he ended up being a member, but he said, when you said that, I said to myself, she's not my fucking friend. I can't stand her. She's killing me. But fast forward a couple of years later, when we were reminiscing about that, we were laughing about it, and he'd lost. Like when he started practicing, he was a smoker and he was overweight, classic hitting 40, all of that stuff. Stopped smoking, lost the weight. And he said, Tara, I went to the cat store. I went to the pet store to get cat litter because I have cats. He said, I picked up this 40+ pound bag of cat litter. And it dawned, he said, oh my God, this is how much extra weight I used to have to carry around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Anyway,
cool.
I just had to tell that story. So it had nothing to do with anything other than,
Well, it does just the like singling out component. I feel like in general there's some fear around that.
Yeah.
The announcement thing, the other way that it shakes out, like we've had it a few times, well, not even a few times. This year, every on-site that I've had, one of the teachers will say, we'll be like announce something at the end of class, like, hey, there's this workshop coming up, and they're like, well, we can't do that because like we would disrupt their savasana or something. Like there's
There's always a
always
reason.
just like a hard no and a reason for it. I'm like, yeah, but just don't say it during savasana. Like weave it in before that. It's just interesting that
After, but yeah.
there seems to be. I'm experiencing. I don't know what you guys are saying. I'm experiencing this like reluctance to say anything about anything in class that would even possibly risk singling someone out, or that isn't just about the postures or isn't some weird esoteric shit like announcing an event, or even just like we had a couple studios had a big talk about selling in a yoga class, and how like that's how you do it. I mean, that's how you want to know how you fill your events in a workshop thing or one of these programs or a retreat. Like it's got to be part of the conversation, and that's when you have the captive audience. Not that they should feel like they're in a sales pitch, like there's a nuanced way to do it, but like you got to bring that into the conversation. Oh, can't do that. People aren't there to the yoga class to get sold to. I'm like, well, yeah, that's true. I'm not saying stand up there like a used car salesman and
Right. heckle every single person and be like, hey, are you signing up for the,
Are you signing up for the
Yeah.
retreat?
Yeah.
Right. Like, don't do that. But
It could work. I used to
I
do
was
that.
going to say, but actually, if you are one of my employees and listening, don't listen because you should be doing that. Hey, you signed up for bingo? Hey, are you signed up for? I always say that they should be doing that actually.
well,
I
at
do
the
a lot of
desk,
that.
at the
Yeah,
desk,
at
you
the desk.
definitely
Oh,
should.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or even after class, I'm like, hey, let me get you signed up for that. Let me
Yeah.
get, and a lot of times it'd be, oh yeah, I've been meaning to sign up for it. But, and I think, Josh, if you want to zoom it out a little further, what you were saying, I think a lot of it comes down to is that it goes, and we've talked about this before, is the product definition of what the class is, but also is what's the expectation of as a teacher when you're teaching a class, like the lights need to be here, the music needs to be there. I mean, all of those details should be defined in an SOP. If you have multiple style classes, like a hot Pilates class is going to be a very different experience than a Bikram class. So you define in addition to the product, part of the product is experience in the class. So you define what that product is, and then you just weave it into. And part of it is that this is what we do as a studio. We do these things. The teacher is responsible for these things. So I think a lot of it just comes to, and if teachers aren't going to get on board, they got to get out.
Yeah.
That's my
Well,
rant.
that's a tangent that goes a whole nother. We end up in this conversation all the time, but this happened recently too. Like at a long-term studio, been around for a long time, well established. We're trying to reestablish. They didn't. It's not even new. This was their protocol before, that the teacher would give a tour before the class, and then so they're just reestablishing that because it was kind of happening willy-nilly and not very well, and the front desk team was new and whatever. And still, they're getting teachers being like, "Oh, well, I don't know. Are we going to get paid more for giving the tour before class?" And we're like, What are you talking
On
about?
the clock, you're getting paid. Like what?
Yeah, what are we talking about here? It's just, I don't know. I'm just seeing these things are really interesting. And I'm trying to understand the psychology behind it. Like, I just can't. Maybe I'm just old school now, but I'm like, I can't understand the idea of, as a teacher, I'm gonna not give the tour before class, and at the start of the class be like, well, I'm not announcing anything because that would disrupt my class somehow, or I don't want to single out a new
Not their
student. So I'm just going to
class.
basically not engage with this captive audience who's staring at me, and then
Mhm.
just describe some yoga postures, and then in the middle, like, throw in some open your heart chakra stuff, or like
Mhm.
start life coaching them. Like, it's baffling to me. It's really baffling.
So you think it's the teachers or is it the studio owners who are like not doing announcements when they should be doing announcements? Or is it the studio?
Both.
Both. I
in
think
the end, from a business
yeah.
perspective, it's always the studio owner's
Studio.
fault. And like, sorry, studio owners, we all just get it being studio owners too. Like, it's always your fault.
Yeah.
But it's like the natural calibration for the teachers. That's what seems to have shifted. It's shifted away from, oh, I have new students, I better engage them and learn their name. I better announce something at the start of class. Oh, we have an upcoming thing at the studio that's really cool, like this workshop. I better tell the class about it. It's gone away from that, just
Well,
naturally, is what
and
it
I
seems like to me.
and I think that goes back to, and I've posted about this, we've talked about it, is the job description for a teacher. And are you hiring the type of teachers that you want to have deliver this experience? And part of it is all of these things that you're talking about. It's like, and again, it's like, just because someone teaches yoga, and I think some of it comes to they're desperate for teachers. And so they're, it's never a good idea to hire somebody, when you're desperate, as we say, hire.
Are we seeing that? Are we seeing that as much now, that there's still that desperation?
In some markets, yes, for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine some markets for sure, just
Yeah.
because some places that are just so small.
Yeah.
I'm actually
There-
having a little bit of a hard time hiring right now, but I'm not, I
Yeah.
wouldn't get desperate for it.
Well, and then particularly certain, like, some studios with particularly like like 26 and 2 teachers. That's always, some studios that have 26 and 2, things like that. But I do just feel that, I don't know, I think it starts with, what your expectation for the teachers are and what your processes are, and defining all of that stuff.
And also your willingness, I actually have two thoughts about it. One is like, I really do think this, yeah, like, yeah, you can have the expectations, but like they mean nothing unless you're willing
To
to
enforce
help people out and to enforce them. Yeah. And I think that's a huge, huge thing that's missing among studio owners. And it's just because a lot of us are women, I think, and or I know that a lot of us are women, and a lot of women are just are are like have a little bit of a deficit when it comes to, just because of socialization and conditioning, of being able to say, hey, I noticed you didn't do announcements after class. That's actually a non-negotiable expectation, and just please make sure you're doing them, because that's just part of the deal. But the other thing I think all of this kind of leads back to, and something that I definitely did not have when I first opened and owned my studio, is like a real um and actually we were just talking about this before we went live, about another coaching client, just like a real understanding of like what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that goes for, and that is, and that follows with every single offering you have. Like every single class, every single offering I have, and I expect my teachers to sell, I have a really good reason for why we're doing it. Well, I have a really good business reason for why we're doing it. And I have a really good soul reason for why we're doing it. And I work really hard now. Definitely did not do this in other earlier versions of my studio, but I work really hard to communicate that to my staff when I hire them, and then ongoing throughout their stuff. It's like, we sell this beginner series because, as we all know, our whole mission here is to get as many people as possible practicing like good, strong, committed yoga practices, because we think that's the best way we can change the world. And when we put someone into a beginner series, that gives them such a great opportunity to actually establish that practice. It helps them connect with our community, which is a huge part of our mission. Like, it's such a crucial thing. And so it's good that you should be selling that, because you should want that for everyone. And I think a lot of things are just sort of like thrown out there. It's like, oh, we're doing this workshop, or we're doing this, or whatever. And if you don't have a reason behind it, it does kind of seem like, why am I selling this random ass workshop?
And that goes to what we were talking about earlier, is what is your product definition? You've defined your product, as opposed to, I hear this a lot. Well, I have a teacher that wants to do this type of class. And I say, well, why? And there's no good answer for it. Or you have all these classes on the schedule, and they're like, why do you have this? And the owner can't tell me why. Or, okay, here's this class, and I look at the description, I'm like, well, what really is this class about? And the owner can't tell me. I'm like, that's a problem. So it's like, you need to, as an owner, you need to define, if you're a vinyasa studio, define what that class is going to be.
Yeah.
And then that's the product. And then everybody sticks to it. And it's the follow-up, the following up with policies, that circling back to what you said, is like, you have the policies, and the expectations, but if there's a violation or an infraction of that, and there's no repercussion, then guess what? They're going to do it again. At the studio I was recently at, the teachers are independent contractors, which is fine if that's how you choose to set it up. But in their contract, it stipulates they have to be there 30 minutes before class. It says so, and they have to stay. However, no teacher adheres to that. None.
Right.
And there's this one teacher that consistently, she's seriously flying in 2 minutes before class, racing there. And it's like, because nobody's ever said, wait a second. And so anyway, so I think that's part of it too, is that when there's no, it's like, there's no ramifications, enforcement of the
Well, and to that point, that's the balance point, Bridget, to what you're saying too, that like, if I want you there 30 minutes before, it is okay for me to contractually say, like, this is the expectation. I don't need to explain myself, just do it.
Right.
In business, there's a place for that. But also, like, I would be a better leader at explaining why. Here's why we want you here 30 minutes before. Here's exactly what it means to be here 30 minutes before. You know, because in ours, it even said like being here 30 minutes before means you are at the desk in your teaching gear with your water bottle filled, prepared to give a new student a tour at the 30-minute mark before. If you come in the doors and then go to our, you know, your back office room and then screw around for 10 minutes, you're late. Like if you need time to do that, do whatever you want. If that means you roll out of the car in your gear and straight to the desk and you're here 30 minutes before, great. Like I don't do you, but this is what it looks like to be on time. And so yeah, clarity, setting it up, but explaining why. The enforcement part, going back to something you said, Bridget, I think, because you've brought this up before, I feel like I can't speak for female business owners, but what I've seen is if there is a reluctance to be more direct in enforcement on some of these things, the conversation that I'm not hearing people have is like, there are alternative ways to still enforce on these things. And so what I am experiencing across all owners, male or female or otherwise, is more of a non-attempt at enforcement. Like I think it's like there's a step before even how do we enforce on this stuff. They don't even know what's going on half the time. Like I don't even realize that half my teachers are showing up 50 minutes before instead of 30. Like their finger's not on that pulse. There's no system in place for checking in on it at all. Or the check-in system that's there is like it's too weak, or things are too like negotiable or whatever. So I don't know. I would just say like for a lot of owners, it's not about micromanaging, but you need to know what's going on in your studio. And so if that's not going to be you firsthand, then you have to have a trusted, that's where you do need like a leader of a group or a manager, a certain seat on your org chart that sort of covers that.
What do you feel about
stuff?
Because I've suggested this a number of times, is teachers clock in and out. Even if they're paid a set, it's like,
yeah, we have a bunch of studios that do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, if they're not on time, it's like, hey, Terry, this is the third time you've been late. It happens again, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the idea of source of truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as you tell, this is interesting, a studio that Carol and I were at recently, the teachers got paid in part off their class attendance. And so it was kind of a fascinating thing where it had created this tension with the front desk team where the teachers are like, hey, like I did a count of my room. There are this many people. And then like, is that what it says on the roster? And there'd be someone missing because the front desk was missing people signing in. Their sign-in process was a little messed up when we first got there. We put a lot of effort into stepping it up. But so the point though was, as soon as you make there be a source of truth that is objective reality, I pay you based off of you clocking in at this time and clocking out at this time. That's it. Then, and that's like this external from not my opinion. It's not me versus Bridget, it's just like, did that happen? Yes or no? That's how that goes. Or you get paid off of the number of people who are checked into the class in the system or whatever. Like then that stuff starts to become important. So that's not always a perfect fix, but I like very often when we find in coaching a way with a studio to create enforcement through the system itself.
Yeah.
Versus enforcement from a person enforcing.
And then everybody knows where you stand. I was, again, a studio where the front desk was paid by the hour, but they weren't even clocking in and out. And so I saw instances where they're late, and I was talking to the owner about it, and she was like, well, she's like, I don't want to micromanage it. They're humans. They're adults. And I said, yes, they're adults. And you got to have a system in place because they may not mean to, but they're taking advantage of the fact. And maybe it's only 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, but over the course of a year, that's hundreds, if not thousands of dollars you're paying to people who aren't legitimately at work.
If I'm going to treat you adult, I had to have this conversation with the studio owner because they had a rampant problem. It was their whole team was just not on board with what was going on. So there was a bit of a struggle. It's one of the few times, it's one of 3 times ever that we seriously debated fire everyone.
Yeah.
We were like, you would probably in a 1-year time horizon be ahead if we asked everybody
And just
and you and this one other person did everything, and it'll suck for 3 months, and then we rehire from there because it was that bad. They didn't go that route. It's very seldom I'd ever suggest that. It was really tough. But part of the conversation was what you're saying, Terry. It was because they said the same thing, like, well, we're all adults here or whatever. I was like, yeah, that's right. Which means as an adult, they can also take responsibility for the cost of their actions.
Yeah.
You clock in 15 minutes late, and you're not getting paid for that 15 minutes.
Also, again, why do you have the rule if
You're not.
I don't,
Yeah.
that does not make any sense to me. Like, I don't, I'm,
No,
I'm
no.
not,
Yeah.
I'm definitely like, you know, if micromanagement to like head in the clouds is a scale, I'm definitely closer to that. But so I don't really relate at all to any of this.
Speaking
But
as one who's had, I'm a little bit, I still do appreciate that, the fact that you have that accountability, because here's the other thing that oftentimes owners and people they don't think about or aren't aware of, or maybe they were, is the fact that, okay, Carol's all, and I saw this too. It's like, I'm always on time. I always was there when I was supposed to be, because in my world, hashtag Terry's dad, on time is late. Right. And so, but then there are other teachers that would roll in 5-10 minutes later. And that has a negative impact when you're, as the owner, aren't addressing it. Right. If the policy is you're to be here X amount of time before class,
yeah.
whether it's your desk staff or whether it's you're a teacher, and you have people that do it, but then there's consistently people that don't, what does that do to the morale of other people? And then eventually it's like, well, nobody's doing anything, so why am I here at 15? You know, I'm just going to start
Yeah.
showing up late. That's where you get into this cause of, you know, like to the point in that studio, Josh, that's how it starts. One
Yeah.
or two people, and it's like, well, they get away with it. Why am I busting my ass to get here on time? When if I roll in 10-15 minutes late, there's nothing happens.
There's no,
Yeah.
Bridget, to your point and what Terry, you're suggesting too, right? Like the existence of a policy doesn't create the behavior.
Right.
The policy has to be there as the clarifier for what we're trying to do, but the behavior comes from you building the culture around the behavior. Hence, explaining the why, training them towards it, enforcing on it, calling it out when it doesn't happen. Not in a confrontational way, but just like holding people to a standard. This is a standard that we have, and we're going to operate that way. And if we're not operating that way, then I will bring this discussion up.
Yeah.
Period. And usually there's not a lot of, if you just act like that all the time, there's really not a lot of tension.
Yeah.
People aren't upset about it. It's only tension when you go try to change it because it's gone way the other way.
And I was going to say, real quick, Bridget, is we talked about this weeks ago, and I've been using this a lot because I love this, what you said, Josh, is that the other thing, when you have those guardrails, the policies, you can still be empathetic to someone. Like if there's a problem with their constantly being late, like maybe I have a client who's one of the teacher has to take, and I had this exact conversation with her. She has a teacher that has to take 2 buses or train in a bus to get to the studio and consistently is late because the train gets held up and things like that. And, you know, is happening enough that it's a problem. It causes problems. So I said, you can still be empathetic and say, I understand you have to take, however, we need you here at this time because this is what happens when you're not here on time. Therefore, does that mean maybe they have to leave earlier? And then also saying, you know, if continues to happen, we're going to have to make some type of other decision about this, i.e., maybe you don't teach here
We're going to
anymore.
figure out another
You have to
thing.
figure out something else because this is negatively impacting the front desk, the client experience. I understand you're coming across town, but again, that's their choice to do that. We can be empathetic to that, but still hold the policy. And I love that. It just sort of like when you said that, Josh, it was just like, it so clicked in my brain that is such a good way to explain it.
We talk about this with owners. I have a piece of content that we put out a couple months back too, saying this, like, you're not special. That's the hard part. That's the ego part. That's the whole dissolution of ego and getting the monkey mind to shut up or whatever that is yoga in practice. So by extension, it's the same thing. It's like, I'm totally empathetic to this is this hard thing that happened, or I'm sorry this happened here. This was difficult, or you got to figure that out. And this is this standard that we've set for being here. Like, you're not special. You think the only person who's ever had to take a bus and a train?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if I treat you special, then I have to treat everyone special, which makes no one special again. One, two, this is me ranting about the larger yoga industry and wellness world for that matter. We see this in other boutique fitness and wellness too. You take this exact scenario, I got to take a bus and train to get here, or whatever, and then you plug it into, you work at corporate electronics shop.
I don't care.
3 strikes and you're out. They don't give a fuck. There's not even empathy. They're like, I don't know how you get here, dude. The shift starts at 8 a.m. You're here at 8:30. You're late.
Yeah.
Like, it's completely cold. And so I don't think we have to be like that. I feel like that's not a good environment too. I've worked those jobs. It sucks where people are like that. But why is it that then, because we're going to have empathy in it, that then it feels like it's negotiable and the envelope gets pushed or whatever in the yoga world is what I see. That's not right either. So,
Oh,
interesting.
interesting. The line doesn't.
You're not, you're not special. You know, my you're not special example in the video was talking about Facebook ads, actually, because I had gotten off a couple calls in the same week where people had said, yeah, but at my studio.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so there's something about even this conversation, like, yeah, but with my team. And what I can say is that we hear that a lot. Like, we hear that a lot from studios. And the funny part is they'll say, yeah, but at my studio, and what they say next, I've heard 15 times this month. Like, it's not,
Yeah.
I can't think of a time where what gets said next is like, whoa, well, that's a curveball.
Oh, wow,
Never heard that before.
That's really funny.
I say this all the time when I'm doing the sales training, is never have I ever heard a studio director say, oh, we have a shitty community and lousy teachers.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
always says, oh,
My teachers suck. They don't really like it here.
and I've read it on this before, and I'm here to tell you that no, you don't. Even the studio that got best of, which is basically, I think that whole best of is just, it's like, whatever. They got best of, and I'm like, yeah, and nobody ever introduced themselves to me.
Yeah. Totally.
Right.
Entire intro month, nobody said anything boo to me because they were all talking to the people they knew. Right. So I'm like, yeah. So that whole, yes, you're 100%. Oh, but at my studio, it's like, yeah, it's happening more than you
Well,
think.
let's take it to the like Facebook ads concept. Oh, well, we ran some Facebook ads. It didn't work. Like, no one came in from it. I'm like, okay, well, how long did you run Facebook ads?
2
1
weeks.
month. How much money did you put into it? Cool. How many ad content pieces did you create? How much follow-up was there? They're like, oh, well, basically nothing. But so it was really more of like, we didn't really test this long enough to figure it out. But the bigger point was like, there are entire businesses that exist and that have grown and make $1 million a month in sales just using Facebook ads only.
Right.
That I've seen them myself. They exist. And then there's thousands, tens of thousands, millions of other businesses that use Facebook ads successfully to get business. So what's more likely? You're a unicorn where Facebook ads don't work for your studio. Your market, your studio, your product is so unique, different, and special. And the person coming to utilize it, like, isn't on Facebook at all, or any of their other out networks, and it doesn't work. And so for you, it doesn't work, period. Or we didn't figure out how it works for your studio. Not that I'm here to like promote Facebook ads. I'm just saying it's a good example of thinking we're special. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we are, Josh. All of us are very special.
We are.
Well, I mean, we are.
We
Yeah.
are. Because Carol.
We are. I'm saying
the most
the
special.
rhetorical, you're not special, but the direct, you're special. I mean, obviously.
Okay. What else?
I don't know. I think we covered it today.
I think we covered it today. Well, if this does get out, I mean, we do have, let's talk about some fun things we have coming up at the YC.
Great.
Summit.
Summit, speaking of special, you want to feel special? The summit will absolutely make you feel special. It is the bomb. It is where you're going to come for a week, and by the end of the week, you're not just, unlike other places, other type of things you go to where people talk at you the whole time, you're getting all these great ideas, and oh, you scribble, 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 and you're like, you all come pumped up, and you get home, you sit down at your desk, and you go, oh God, now what do I do? How do I, and I've got notebooks filled with stuff that never got done. Not the case with the summit.
Yeah.
By end
Yeah,
of
we're doing it in real time.
we do it in real time. We talk a little bit and shut up, which is hard to believe for me particularly, but we talk, we shut up, and then we get shit done
Yep.
in paradise. And we have fun doing
Yeah, it's kind of
And
a
you
work
have a
hard, play
margarita.
hard situation. And you can have a margarita. Yeah.
it. And we've got DJ Carol.
DJ Carol.
DJ Carol.
Did you see, I just sent you a song for the playlist.
I did. I saw it. Thank you.
We'll see if it makes it on. Yeah, I think the summit, look, I mean, the story we tell all the time, the summit came out of this concept of like, you need a separate moment in time and a separate space to actually get into the creative thinking process of planning for what you're going to do for the next year. And usually you only need a week to do that. Like, you don't actually need that much time, but you just need it separate. The idea of like, I'm going to sit down in my studio with my manager and talk this out, that's really hard. There's always a distraction. There's other things going on. These in between classes. So it's like that the task of planning itself becomes this huge, arduous problem, and you end up just not doing it, basically. So you get that separation and you can get into the flow, and then you're in a group of peers who are also doing that. So there's some inspiration around that. What we see is people come up with some really cool stuff, but to Terry, to your point, then they leave with a plan for the next year, including the strategy and like, what are the next steps for doing that, the prioritization. And this, as the saying goes, for every 10 minutes you spend in good, proper planning, you save an hour in implementation.
Oh yeah.
So it speeds you up for the year, period.
Yeah.
This year, two other important details. One, we will have the manager track again.
Say that, yeah. Last year
last year was our first year with the manager track, super successful. So if you have a management team or like someone, even if they're not titled as a manager, but they're like one of your go-to people, what we do in the manager track is get them prepared to do more implementation on the vision and plan that you're coming up with. They can also be part of that brainstorming with you, but the idea is by the time they leave, they're like, okay, now my owner Bridget is like, here's what we're doing, and I know what to do with that information. They help you to get it organized and map it out, and can check in with it, and you've got that other person to keep you on track over the year.
Plus just some organizational things to help up level, like in terms of using technology. And I can tell you, several of my clients brought their managers, and they were just like, oh my gosh, it's made such a difference. Because they're when they have they're in synchronicity with each other. They all know what they're working towards. It made it that much better for them. Yeah.
I think the manager track too, what we see is the managers come out of it with a super step up in confidence.
Yeah.
Like their buy-in and their confidence level goes exponentially higher. And when we're talking about, that spectrum of head in the clouds to micromanagement, if you've got a manager who's bought in more, they help you on the enforcement side of things too, in a positive way, because they start to see a bigger picture and where they fit into it and why this stuff matters, almost through osmosis, just by getting to participate in it. 2 years ago, before we even had the manager track, 3 years ago, we had two managers that made the comment. They're like, I've been working at the studio for 10 years. We've never gone anywhere or done anything. I've never been to a conference. We never did a weekend away. They were so pumped just to get to participate. They're like, I hope I'm able to help while I'm here or whatever. And we're like, relax, dude. Like, you're going to be just fine. But I don't know. They were just, it really demonstrated something to them as well. So I think
I would say it shows as a leader that you're investing in them. You're investing in the future of your business. You're investing in their skill set. And hey, and because I've heard this, and maybe we say this for next week, it's like, well, what if they go out and do their own thing? Great. The thing about developing leaders is that that's part of leadership, is you help people. A leader's job is to help develop other leaders, essentially.
Leaders build leaders. Yeah.
Leaders build leaders. So if that happens, great. And if anything else, you've created something that you should feel proud of. And or I have a couple of clients that's like, this group, they want to sell their studios eventually.
Yeah.
Here's someone you can like.
That's someone who might want to buy it.
That's someone
That's
might-
one. It's in the top. It's in the top people who buy a studio is the existing manager or the
Yeah.
existing team member.
Mhm.
I would say the leaders build leaders. There's sort of that fear is not completely unfounded because you do sometimes have someone who's great and then they leave. But what isn't articulated often is why do they leave? Like maybe they leave town or whatever else. They leave because there's something better.
Yeah.
And so the thing that's not understood is in the top 3 reasons that someone leaves a good job with a good relationship with okay pay is boredom. It's because they're not challenged, they're not growing personally, there isn't a career trajectory for them. And I feel like studios are a category that can run that risk where it's like, I'm a manager, but like I'm capped out. There's a limited amount of more money I could make here. There's no professional development being put into me, whatever. It's like, it's nice and I like the environment, I like the studio, but it's like they slowly become a little bit, not quite apathetic, but like bored with the whole thing. So the simple thing like, cool, Carol, you're a rock star. I want you to come to this summit, do this manager track. Like, let's make you even more of a rock star here. That indicates a lot. And I think actually probably builds more loyalty than it does risk of losing someone from an investment standpoint.
And just because we're talking about it, the early bird special does end at the end of this month. So make sure you get, I'll post the link in the follow-up, but also it's on our website and you can always message us and we can get you the info for it. And book now so you can, save your spot. And and this fee does cover your accommodations. It covers some food, all the activities, the labs, and transportation to and from Puerto Vallarta because you'd fly in there. So it covers that both ways. So, so basically you just have to get to PVR and we'll take care of the rest.
Bridget, do you have something to add there?
I was just going to ask a logistical question that might be illuminating to anyone listening also, because I've never been to the summit. What kind of does the manager track look like? Like, is it like the studio owners does something and then that day it gets like pipelined down to the manager and then they do something with it? Or is it just like, what does it look like for managers?
Great question.
Yeah, yes, and yeah, it's a good question. So we have the main room where the managers would be in with the owners to get things started. There's like some brainstorming, some learning, etc. Then there's a breakout where there's a separate room that the managers go to, and we're first getting them organized for the most part around like how do they organize themselves, the tasks, the schedule, how do they organize their owner? Like one of the conversations we have with them really bluntly is how the owner is going to be the worst person in the business. And I say that wholeheartedly because that's me. Like I can see the picture and have the system, but like I'm going to be the worst person enforcing the system on myself. So that is like when we define the word management, that's what that is. And we talk to them about like what is actually valuable for a studio if you're in the position of a manager, what actually matters, and how do you get that? So it's like getting them prepped around that stuff and putting some systems in place, answering their questions, giving them a private space to like talk openly amongst a group of managers. Because that's the other thing, as a manager of a studio, that's a unique position. You can't talk to your owner quite as openly as you'd like to, as much as we all believe that. That's not what happens. So there's, I don't know, like a little bit of a diffusing some pent up energy conversation, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it.
It gives them a forum with peers that are in a similar position, and it helps them form relationships. And I have a couple of my clients who the managers of they now like, hey, they email each other for support. So there's also, it builds a little of support beyond the owner. So I
Yeah,
think
we have some owners that have met at the summit. They literally fly to each other's studios once a year and like hang out. Like they become like owner friends.
Yeah.
Same thing. We have a few managers that became pals. They ring each other up.
yeah, hey, I've got
They're like,
this.
hey, I'm trying to do this. What the fuck do you do here? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Just having
So
someone
that's number one. And then to your question though, Bridget, then also there's a component, the managers come back into the mix and it's like, okay, here's the 3 biggest dominoes for the year. Let's talk strategy on how it, and then they're taking that and should be implementing it into the systems
Cool. Love
and like
that.
recording the tasks. So it's a little bit of an ebb and flow of their participation. It does slightly depend on the studio too. We have a couple studios where someone's in the manager role, but they're really more of a GM. Like they're actually operating the entire thing. So their participation looks maybe slightly different, but it's by choice.
And also, like to Josh's point too, if they're not technically that manager title, it's someone that's in a position of a little bit beyond just like they're a front desk or a teacher. They're sitting in maybe multiple seats. Maybe it's a lead studio assistant. It doesn't matter the title. Yeah. It's the person that is basically, like Josh said, is like you're sort of your go-to person, the person that helps you with stuff, whether it's a manager, an assistant, studio,
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
they'll, if you think, oh, I don't have a manager, don't get hung up on the actual title. It's like, is there a person that you go to that helps you more than maybe other folks in the organization, that type of thing.
And what an amazing way to like, just like to Josh's point, like building that loyalty, like just giving them like this such awesome, like just showing them so much love by being like, hey, come to, like, let me buy you a room in Mexico for this thing. And like, you know, like, let's, like I said, have some margaritas and get some work done. And like, I imagine it would just be such a fun week, even if it's a lot of work, you know? So
Yeah.
what a fun way to just show someone, you know, if you do have someone awesome on your team who you just like adore, and like I do, to just be like, here's this really fun thing. Do you want to do this really fun thing with me? So yeah, really cool.
Hashtag work hard, play hard.
Amen.
Yeah.
Last thing for the summit, a little bit of a shift this year. So for those of you who've been to the summit before, you'll know that like what we do is more or less the same macro structure, but we're always tweaking and improving and optimizing things. And it also depends a little bit on what's going on. So this year there will be some specific time allotted to more of a mastermind workshop with the coaches and myself on how do you create like normalized use of AI in your business and automating things, because we're at a moment where that is growing exponentially. So there'll be some specific time and effort there. And also we're debating adding in a lead generation conversation as a secondary one, because that's the other thing that every studio is struggling with a little bit and very often thinks they need. Often they don't need it first. They actually need conversions and sales. That's what we see most of the time. But it's a whole branch of conversation. Anyway, so there's going to be AI, automation, conversation, mastermind, workshop, and then probably also a lead generation one as well as some little bonus material that'll be in there. So a little different, unique to this year.
So check it out. Sign up before the early bird expires. And yeah, I get to hang out. DJ Carol. Party Terry.
The pressure, right?
Yeah, we're just
The pressure. You love it, Carol. You'll be all mysterious right now. You're like, Carol's already got a playlist going. I'm sure of it.
I've been sitting there.
See, yeah.
Since we got back,
know.
I started your songs they ended last year. I'm like, oh, let's put this on the playlist. And a couple of my songs did make the playlist last year.
That's true.
They did. Yeah.
That's true.
They did.
I knew it. I knew it because you screamed about it for an hour. I don't even bother sending Carol, so I'm like, no, none of my music's making onto this playlist. I just trust the process. Carol's got it. All right, that's a wrap on this week's Weekly Roundup. You can listen in live every Thursday morning right here on Facebook, or if you subscribe to Studio Cult TV on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening from, you can find us there too. We'll see you next week.
And don't forget, we have Spill the Booch on Tuesdays. Check in with Spill the Booch, which is super fun.
All right. Peace.
Bye, everybody.